Hello and welcome. You are watching Business Today's special coverage from BioAsia 2026 in Hyderabad. India's life sciences GCCs have grown rapidly across pharma, biotech, medtech, and clinical research. Are they now shaping the global healthcare decisions also? And what is their biggest opportunity lying ahead? I'm Neetu Sharma, and I will put those questions to a stellar panel I have today. Sudeep Krishna, co-founder and president Healthark; Priya Hingorani, managing director India and VP SCA Miltenyi Biotec; Madhav Vattikuti, SVP Technology and GM India Perceptive; Divya Joshi, vice president engineering and board member MEIC Medtronic. Very warm welcome to all of you. I would like to start off with Divya. Over the past these years, GCCs have expanded rapidly in Hyderabad. So what are the lessons that you have learned in the past?
Great. You said how can GCs make an impact in the life sciences, innovation value centers. I started my journey with Medtronic 15 years back as an engineering R&D leader in employee number one. And today we have emerged to be the largest R&D engineering innovation center outside the US, not just in terms of the headcount, but in terms of the span as well as the depth of work we do in software, we do in embedded enterprise, connected care, as well as in regulatory and quality. So the journey has been right, it's like a startup, and then the ecosystem, the local government in Telangana has been very, very, helpful and partnering with us, the ecosystem around us in terms of the test labs, the academia, I think has been wonderful. And finally, the talents availability. So the experience has been exciting, challenging, but very fulfilling.
Okay, I'll bring you in this conversation, Sudeep. You have been in this segment for the last 20 years. So what has changed in the GCC life sciences? What have you seen? What have you noticed that this has changed over the years?
So, what's interesting about life sciences, which I've not seen as much in other GCCs, is that, normally in GCCs, there's this whole focus on taking the less complicated parts of the value chain and working with those in India. In life sciences, it's the other way around, actually. It's fascinating that most life sciences GCCs will pick on the R&D part, which is so critical, and look at moving that to a place like India, right? And that talks a lot about the talent that's available here. So I think what has changed is that movement towards the more complicated parts of the value chain has gotten even, deeper now, right? So in the past, for example, a lot of GCCs would look at statistical programming as part of the clinical value chain. But now increasingly, there's a lot of demand for biostatistics. So you just remember 15 years ago, you would say that we will do the biostatistics part in the US, but we'll do the programming part in India. Now there's doing everything from statistics to the programming end to end in India. I think that's what's changed. And it's a good change for the system.
Divya, building on that, I'll come to you. That see, GCCs in India, they have always been considered as a supportive base. But now, you are looking at the engineering side of it. How has it changed? Are we, becoming globally competitive, and how are we contributing to the global landscape?
So, first of all, we don't call it a GCC. We call it an engineering innovation or a global innovation center, which means that we are doing very specific in terms of technology. And we are really looking at, so in short, like Medtronic, there's a disease state. So Medtronic looks at 76, disease states and the therapies that we do are 76, wherein we use the therapy to deliver through a technology or a product to treat the disease state, to, alleviate pain, restore health and extend life. So here we work on understanding the need of a patient for a positive patient outcome. So the technologies that we use, like imaging and navigation, robotics, connected care, remote patient monitoring, we are talking of deep brain stimulation or spinal cord stimulation. Examples in robotic surgery, trying to use urology or other gynec procedures, which means it is not about doing something a low end of the things of the low hanging fruit. It's more of understanding the need, working on the technology. So the center here, right, which is in Hyderabad, we really are part of global product launch, and we look at this center as an one team culture across the business units in terms of use of technology. So it's like high-end technology in terms of maybe product or cyber security. We talk of hyper automation, use of AI and data analytics and warehouse, data warehousing. So it's more of really the talent has to be up to that mark to compete globally and deliver value and just not be like a headcount. It's not a cost arbitrage play anyway. It's more of a technology, scalability, and the proven credibility and institutional credibility that the capability centers or the innovation centers have been able to establish here.
I'll next toss the next question to you, Madhav. You have also been looking at a nice center here. What have been your key priorities and how has the business transformed because of this particular center and how is it contributing globally?
No, it's a very key question, because the transformation that you're talking about is really what is fueled by, I think, over the last 3 years. What we've seen is we talked about cost arbitrage being the initial launch point for why India, and then it moved to scale because people wanted to scale certain functions, and truly innovation is now at the heart of that transformation. So we're going from scale to innovation, and that innovation is actually supported by the talent. We talked about the talent, which is both life sciences talent, the computing talent that we have, as well as the ability for us to engage physicians in that process, which makes it really exciting. So the transformation that we've seen over 3 years is something that I think was accelerated by the advent of generative AI. It's not that those transformations didn't happen before, but I think the advent of generative AI has triggered that transformation in a way which many other inflection points probably didn't. And so I think it's an exciting time for all of us, because we can now use the talent and the scale that we have to truly drive innovation and capability. And the C in GCCs is capability. So we're moving from just scale to developing capabilities that are pretty central to any of our organizations.
Priya, we are here at BioAsia. You handle a very critical area, cell and gene therapy. How is this evolving from India and to the world? What is the future of this particular cell and gene therapy going forward?
So I think one of the things that has happened, Neetu, is just a few days ago, we heard the government declare a Bioshakti program, which is exclusively focused on biotech as an industry. So it's laid out some 1,000 million euros towards research. 1,100 clinical trial centers have come up. And this is indicating that there is investment by DBT, BioRac, and government investments of biotechnology towards making sure that we have our own startups, we have the ecosystem that is running, and also the attraction of multinational companies to India. What I can see, India is probably at the inflection point for cell and gene therapy. We are starting slow, but we also have a very large population which will respond very positively to CAR-T. So we have a couple of products here, but I think there is always scope for improvement. There is always scope for new indications to come in. If we look globally right now, it's liquid tumors, but there is work that's happened and very aggressive work on autoimmune disorders, on neurodegenerative disorders, on multiple other, I think, diseases which were considered as the ones which will not have any treatment. They will find treatment. And so for Indian patients in India, where patients do not have any other options, cell and gene therapies are coming in, but soon going to be second line and hopefully first line. So I see India growing. I see India actually exploring when it comes to cell and gene.
So when we talk about India, as earlier we used to think like GCCs have expanded gradually in the past decade. So from execution point to the innovation centric and outcome driven, can you share some examples with us that how do you think that the role of India is evolving in cell and gene therapy?
So excellent question, Neetu, because it's not only about, so cell and gene is not, most people know it as CAR-T. It is not that narrow, right? It's stem cells, everything that has to do with genetic modification, anything that has to do with transforming the way we know our body today. So I was just at a couple of centers over the last 2 weeks, And I'm excited to see next generation sequencing happening in research in a hospital setting. You would normally see this in the research now, right? There are more than 350 startups that are funded by BioAsia right now. And I think they are doing a really amazing job at making India the starting point of all this research. Our own company organization is bringing in new technology and innovation to this country. So I think while I'm on this panel, I would really like to mention about the systems that we have. And one of the systems is very aptly named Prodigy, which is an end-to-end closed automated machine that you can put on this table and do an whole cell culture process to this to get a CAR-T out. And not only CAR-T, multiple CAR-T. So innovation is happening. It's happening sometimes in micro levels within India in certain startups. But I think it's also coming from global. You look at partnerships, to look at associations, to look at how we can make this cause further to be patient-centric and help the patients this busy.
So, Madhav, building on that, what Priya just said, your company is in AI analytics. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. Made the drug discovery, made the diagnostics, made treatment. So, what is your viewpoint on this? That how can AI improve the patient outcomes through clinical trials?
No, I think AI is here to stay, and AI, I would say, is a few things for us, specifically in the context of our company, Perceptive. The first is we deal with images within the context of clinical trials. So whatever the imaging modality, it is important for us to get to the outcomes that the imaging is suggesting, because that then determines whether the drug has been successful or not in the submissions process to the regulators for approvals of drugs, INDs, NDAs, and so on. So the ability for AI to accelerate the discovery or the detection of, let's say, solid tumors as an example, and the ability to show that over a period of time through the treatment process it has shrunk or it has not shrunk, those outcomes are really important, and AI accelerates that whole discovery process. That's one application of AI that we've seen come to fruition pretty rapidly. Beyond that, I think AI is extremely useful in accelerating our operational processes, increasing the efficiency of our operational processes, making sure that as we go through, and this is actually a story of transformation of what used to happen in India before, is the whole process was split up into an assembly line, and there were parts of it that people thought could be done in India. Now what has happened is, as all those parts started assimilating and accumulating in India, the integration of all those parts and then the acceleration of those parts through automation and AI is something that is very evident if you go around any of the offices in India. And it may not be as evident if you look at it from a C-suite, because those operational functions and the connectivity between them is something that AI is able to accelerate the operational capability of that really fast. And that all happens because those capabilities are developed here, because people see that connection. So I believe there is a huge opportunity for us, whether we talk about the sponsor's ability to view the data in near real time, or we talk about the connectivity between our processes, or our ability to detect, to diagnose, to also look at the treatment viability, etc., including all the discovery processes that we talked about just now. I think we're just scratching the surface, is what I believe, around the AI. And I think the application of AI in a very responsible, ethical way is going to be pretty crucial to expanding, and not just expanding, but exponentially expanding what we can do from our GCCs.
Agent, I can just expand on that. One additional point. And yesterday, I think many of us attended the session where he's speaking of precision medicine becoming one of the things that's coming to AI, molecular diagnostic, which are coming up from AI. So anything that had a pathway of, let's say, multiple years is now looking at, suddenly it's there tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very interesting space.
Absolutely.
Thought it.
Absolutely.
So could you go to them? because you were talking of molecules, and I was just thinking on from a device perspective. When you look at it, AI, does any use of AI makes a shift left in terms of accelerating the backup equation? Faster to market, it means lesser cost, which means the patient bears lesser cost, better patient outcomes because you got algorithms working back end. And therefore, I think it's easier. You got a lot of data in terms of drug delivery, but from devices, it takes almost a longer period to launch, like a robotic surgery, or maybe looking at some of the cardiac ablation solutions. The more data you have, how to use the data in terms of not only for analyzing what's happening, but for the new device product development. How are you using it? A little. I'm not saying drug delivery takes lesser time. It's more important. It's also important.
No,
Every is a different perspective.
yeah, I think on both sides, in our tech and drugs.
Very interesting perspective on that. Sudeep, I want to bring you back in this conversation. When we talk about AI, do you think that it can definitely beat the human capability? Where do you think that there can be a balance?
Look, I think your question's very timely because there's a little bit of this peer psychosis about AI, right? And I'll give you a live example of a project that we're doing for a client where we are helping them leverage the power of AI to automate the dossier preparation process, right? Now, the dossier that's being prepared with the help of this AI engine that we have built for the client, it is a little more accurate than it was before. It happens faster. It's not replacing the human. I think that's very important for us to understand, right? It is enhancing the human effort. So, to that extent, it's called AI because that intelligence beyond a point is artificial, right? Like Madhav and I were discussing before this session, wherein I feel that I think it'll become a part of our lives. It'll help us be better, but it'll never replace us. At least in this current form, I don't think we should worry that we'll become irrelevant.
All right. But AI is definitely helping in clinical trials. So building on that, I'll move again to Madhav. Madhav, India is playing a crucial role in clinical trials, and many companies from different countries are coming to India for doing their clinical trials, despite the population being different, regulatory framework being different. But clinical trial is definitely increasing in India. What is your viewpoint? How do you think India can play an important role in the global clinical trial landscape?
I think I'm sure the panel will have a lot to add, but I think Bioshakti was referenced, and that is really the cornerstone, us realizing in India that the clinical research and our ability to do two things, right? One is support the global clinical trials, but also use the same framework for validating some of our ancient remedies that we have. And I think that whole continuum, the importance that the government has placed on creating that capability right from the center in terms of funding, in terms of creating a framework, the sites framework that is launched for the support of clinical trials. All of those things, I think, are a huge impetus to the point where I think this is truly where we recognize that we have to not just support global clinical trials, but also create capabilities to launch clinical trials. And this is where I think as our companies that are based in India, headquartered in India, start to develop drugs, the ability for them to discover new molecules, the ability for them to be able to test it on a financially smaller scale than we were ever able to do before, in a faster way. All of those things, I think, will be a huge driver for us as we get into the ecosystem of launching our own clinical trials. So, and obviously, a lot of what we've learned so far within all the GCCs that are in Hyderabad and across India, what we've learned is the whole process of how this is supposed to work. And what we're doing now is accelerating that process and accelerating the submissions of the dossier, like Sudeep mentioned. All of those singular processes are now connected, and all of those will then contribute further to our ability to do clinical trials and play a bigger role in that whole ecosystem.
As a consultant, if I could add this, we do India for the world. I think Madhav's point is we need to do India for India, because even now doing a phase 1 trial in India, which is, starting something from scratch is still not that easy.
Yeah, and I would agree because I was on a panel last week from BioAsia, which was talking about how do you get first in human trials to India.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big space that we need to look at. But the important thing is there is conversation around.
Yes.
There is talk of regulatory sandboxing to figure out what you can do to make this happen. And importantly, data integrity. Because that's what the world is looking at, right? That how do you establish that this is replicated, consistent, quality data and some now. So this is interesting time. That's very interesting.
So we are using a lot of AI and in clinical trial, drug discovery. Priya, I would like to understand from you, do you think India is lagging in terms of talent if it comes to AI? And what can we do to bridge that gap?
I don't think so. Very honestly, Neetu. I think I'll quote Stefan Miltenyi again. He said, I have more Indians in Germany working for us rather than Indians working in the Indian corporation. So it's not about the talent, it's not about the skill, it's about opportunity. And it's about the right upskilling. I think one of the things that we need to understand is we have a lot of people who understand what needs to be done, but the translation of that or the application of that when it comes to the real world space, that is where they need hand-holding and training. So the more our educational institutions or us as organizations can bring the talent to the table, will be helped. I give you a very simple example, and this is not related to AI, but it's related to skill. We have cell and gene, which we spoke about earlier. There's no dearth of scientists who do cell and gene, but there is translation of the cell and gene to the industry. That needs complete understanding and upskill. So we're working with THSTI to make sure that they are upskilled, they are trained, and it's intense process. It's not something you can do in a jiffy. You need to go through certain processes, this proper certification, because ultimately it's patient life that they're holding. The same is true for AI. The same is true for robotics. I think you need to get the best talent to prove to the world that what we bring to you is not just data entry and the first entry level people, but we bring some of the most brilliant tech innovators. I don't think there is dearth. We see a lot of them across the globe, but they come from India and they are based out of India.
So Divya, Priya said that there is no dearth of talent. We only need to upskill them. How do we upskill them to match the standards at the global?
No, so two things here. One is data engineering and data science. A lot of the organizations, like maybe my limited knowledge is, they look at the application there in the AI phase and not getting into the core data science of algorithm. Yeah. So it's like fast, like an IT industry, like functionality fast, deliver a software program, use Python or C#, .NET, etc. So a similar approach is happening. What tools are available? What is on mobile? How do we connect to cloud? So talent is available because it is proven in the software industry. But I think the mindset in terms of pure research happening in this field from an academia industry partnership is an area for the organizations and the government to look at it. The AI summit in Delhi is very apt, like we're talking AI, and there's a big summit happening in New Delhi. But you try to talk to the, like we hire interns, right? The interns come with a very different mindset as compared to people who are already trained in the way they've been working. They're fast to learn. In second year, third year, they're talking of use of data. They're talking of AI. They're talking of machine learning and decision support systems to really get a better outcome in whatever field. It can be just ordering food or a patient outcome or maybe a drug delivery. So I think talent is available, and it's just the curriculum, the approach to the problem. Like I was in one of the meetings where somebody said that we're looking at AI in the government. The government was part of that here, and they said we're talking of 5% people who work in AI. What about the 95% there in the organization? The people like me or somebody else, how do they get trained to understand how can AI be utilized to the way it can give a better?
Sudeep, what is your viewpoint on that life sciences GCCs in India what should they do to be, in a competitive environment, to be very competitive in terms of, clinical trials, in terms of research, development? How can we be competitive at a global scale?
I think it's a great question because you have to remember that if there's a global life sciences company, India is not the only GCC destination that they have, right? Almost everyone has 2 to 3 different locations. It's either you'd have something in Mexico to serve the US market in the same time zones. You might have something in Eastern Europe to serve the European markets. Right. And I think it's very important for the Indian GCC ecosystem to recognize, because sometimes what happens is I see a lot of clients coming and telling me that, we have scale. Like if you want 1,000 AI data engineers, it can only happen in India. And I think that might be true, but I think there's a little bit of that, sort of overconfidence in that statement. So every time someone says that, I cringe a little, right? Wherein we can't take it for granted. Right. So I think everything that we're discussing, upskilling, leveraging the use of not just AI, but every other new technology that's coming in. But always, keep your focus on the fact that, you're not the only one who's doing this.
So just to add what Sudeep rightly said, right? Scaling. It's just not about numbers.
Yeah.
So I think we should get over that thought process that it can happen here because we got a 1.5 billion population, lot of STEM graduates. It also happens that globally various centers are evolving, and I think competition will happen, but also how do we complement from an organization perspective, like what should we do at what place? And I would say from a global capability innovation centers here, I think it's more to do with how do we really contribute to an innovative life cycle in terms of a new product development, which takes few years, but also learning from the release product management or release product engineering and learning from the predicate devices. Then only you'll be able to apply your knowledge and technology to come up with a new device or kill inputs to your global partners to be seen at a platform that, yes, this center or this group has evolved and it's a partner and not just like do this or do that, but really evolve and have a deliberation rather than do.
Yeah. Be humble and be a little paranoid also. I think it's okay. It's okay to just entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, Neetu, you can just add here. So I think one more thing here is that there are islands of excellence, right? You will always find in India a certain one center which is doing a fantastic job and make me happy. But is it consistent? Is it something that I can replicate and pick up? And when the world is looking at you, they're looking at, oh, this is one size fits all. That's not true. And therefore, how do you make that consistency come up? And like he said, it's not a mass factory of 1,000 AI engineers, but yeah, maybe 100, but world class. And then how do you make them work?
So, Madhav, I want you to take a question. A lot of companies abroad are investing in GCCs in India. Why is that?
Well, I think something that is very unique to India is obviously we've proven that through the previous iteration is scale, but it is also scaled talent that is very adaptive. And I'll give you an example, just going back to the previous discussion we were having. When I did my engineering, computer science engineering, that was the only branch. Otherwise, you could do ECE or electronics and telecommunication. But today, if you go into the engineering colleges, you'll see AI ML being offered as actually a bachelor's course that people can take. So they're specializing in AI. So this adaptation that happens is something that India can adapt at a very rapid scale. So our ability to adapt to what is needed is something that is very unique to India. The other aspect of it is in life sciences, you need to have an intersect of life science talent. You need to have the computing talent that is necessary to actually combine with the life science talent. And you need the kind of leadership that we need to continue to develop that can leverage those talents, the intersection of that talent. And why I think India is a great destination for it is we have abundant life science, whether it is we have a lot of hires in the life science space because we do particularly imaging looking at the quality of the images and so on. So we hired a lot of M-Pharms and a lot of biotech students who out of college who are joining us to make sure that they have a career in life sciences. So they're doing life sciences. We implement solutions in our space where we're looking at the workflow that the image goes through, which is computers and technology that we use to enable that workflow of the processes. And now growing the global leadership and having that leadership that has not just global ownership of P&L and global responsibilities, but like Divya said, actually being able to contribute back in equal front to the discussion of where the company is headed. I think all of that inflection is where all of that coming together is where India is really has a strong thing going for it.
Priya, in the innovation front, how are the Indian teams based in GCC contributing to the innovation that is happening globally?
So, Neetu, I think it's dependent on what roles they are playing. And they could be something like I say on a micro innovation level, you can do something better. Like you said, maybe master DI that we do a dossier in a particular way and customize it. But also on the large scale, if you're looking at, innovative products to come or things to be done, then if you have people at the back end who have that capability and they can contribute and bring in new technology or at least ideas of new technology, that can work. However, I think for all this to come to fruition, the ecosystem and the value chain has to be integrated to each other. And if I would expand on that, there are so many good ideas that people come up with. Sometimes they lack funding. Sometimes they lack the right place to get that idea to life, right? And then the risk of fail. So we as a country, and all of us are brought up to believe, in school, children are brought up to believe, it's not good to fail. You need to be in the top 10. That's something that needs to change. It's changing, but it needs to change dramatically. You see, it's okay, even as a student, to, when you're doing your research, to not be there. That will help the innovation minds. I would love to see, there are few products coming out of India which are great. I would really love to see a blockbuster coming out of here. We were having a conversation over lunch today. If you look at Denmark, Copenhagen, it's a very small country, but a GLP-1 came out of there. So why can't India?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So that's the whole thing. So it's about the ecosystem. It's about getting support, and it's also about ensuring that it's okay.
Many Indian companies are working on that GLP. They're bringing their own molecules. So yeah, the work is in place. And the next, which is the next breakthrough that you discussed about that should come from India? What can that breakthrough be?
So there are 2 or 3 areas that India can really contribute to, and that's dependent on the incidence and prevalence and the disease that we have. Antimicrobial resistance is becoming a big thing. How do we make sure that we are able to do that? Is there something that we can bring in? I was at a hospital this morning. They're talking of gut microbiome and, some research which is genetically, related to the Asian population, and they can bring this. Oncology is a third area where we are growing so rapidly in cancer rates. Can you bring in something which is cost effective and same time, revolutionary that can impact the world? And then diabetes, of course. What can you do which can help in type 1 diabetes? So at least you can help them. In type 2, of course, there is an up and down control. But so these are 4, I think, therapeutic areas I can see. But even in the device, and if I was to talk what Divya would look at, there is, we have such engineering marvels that come out of the IITs and, many other NIPERs here and other institutes. Why can't they bring something which is, the world can look back and say, yeah, this is great. Our students do it when they go there. I can't.
Right, this conversation is becoming interesting minute by minute, but in the interest of time, before we wrap up this session, Sudeep, last question to you. See, cost efficiency brought the first generation of GCCs. Scale brought the second. What will be the third way forward?
I strongly believe, and we've spoken about this in the morning as well, is that the next big breakthroughs will be driven out of GCCs in India, right? And it's not as much new products, it's new ways of doing. right? So we are talking about, for example, using software as a therapeutic input. Sometimes when you take a bunch of people who are co-located in one space, they tend to work together. Magic happens, right? I know some clients in GCCs who are working on driving global access protocols. Right? There's a lot of work that's happening in health outcomes. A lot of that thinking will start here and will be taken the world over. And if I go back to the example I gave, that the dossier preparation input that we did, it was done here at a GCC in India. It is now being adapted by their global regulatory organization, the world over. Right? So we'll see a lot more of those kind of examples where you take it.
All right, what I infer from this conversation that GCC have come a long way, but the future will only tell that what value do they have and what they will offer to the global life sciences landscape. Thank you so much, lady and the gentleman, for the major good perspectives. It's a very good conversation. Thank you so much for speaking to Business Today here at BioAsia in Hyderabad.
Thank you for
Thank you for having us.
So India's life sciences GCCs have grown significantly. The focus is now on what they deliver and how much influence they carry going forward. We will take a short break and stay tuned to Business Today for more updates here in BioAsia 2026 Hyderabad.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.